What if the most profound changes in life didn't arrive with a thunderclap, but instead with the quiet rustle of an old book? For years, Mark had moved through his days like a character in a forgotten play, predictable and uninspired. He was stuck in a cubicle, the fluorescent lights humming a dull, constant tune above his head, illuminating stacks of paperwork that seemed to multiply overnight. Each morning, the lukewarm coffee in his chipped mug tasted of resignation. And the drone of traffic outside his window was a daily reminder of a life he had not chosen, but had merely fallen into. It felt the weight of unspoken expectations, the subtle pressure of bills piling up, and the unsettling quiet of a dream deferred. The air in his cramped apartment often felt heavy, thick with the scent of cheap takeout and the lingering dust of neglected ambitions. Mark worked long hours, his fingers flying across the keyboard, yet the numbers in his bank account rarely seemed to budge. He'd tried the usual paths, more hours, less spending, but the cycle persisted. A relentless treadmill of earning just enough to survive. He saw friends buying homes, traveling, building lives that felt out of reach. A quiet desperation settled over him, a yearning for something more, something different. One evening, sifting through a box of his grandfather's old belongings, he found it. A worn, leather-bound biography of Warren Buffett. Its pages brittle with age, corners dog-eared and marked with faint, almost illegible notes in spidery handwriting. He'd seen the name before, knew of the legendary investor, but had never considered what lessons might truly lie within the life of a man known for his disciplined, almost monastic approach to building lasting value. The journey wasn't immediate, nor was it paved with sudden revelations. Mark continued his routine, the weight of his circumstances pressing down. There were days the exhaustion felt absolute, like concrete poured into his veins. He remembered a particularly harsh winter evening, his car refusing to start, leaving him stranded and contemplating the cost of repairs he couldn't afford. The biting cold seemed to mirror the chill in his own spirit. He felt a deep, piercing shame as he called a friend for help. The sting of dependence, a bitter pill. He'd look at the tattered Buffett book on his nightstand, a silent challenge. What good were grand ideas when the immediate reality was so grinding? He was tired, perpetually tired. And the thought of adding another self-improvement regimen to his already strained life felt like an insurmountable burden. He often wondered if he'd missed his chance, if the time for big changes had already passed him by. The sting of a recent credit card rejection. After he'd applied for a small loan to cover unexpected medical bills, solidified his lowest point. He sat on his couch, the dim light from the street lamp outside casting long shadows, and just stared at the wall, feeling utterly defeated. Then came a shift, subtle at first. He picked up the old biography again, not seeking a magic formula, but simply a distraction from his own worries. He began to read, truly read, about Buffett's early days. His relentless pursuit of knowledge, the hours he spent devouring reports, annual statements, and books, wasn't about flashy moves or quick wins. It was about understanding, about patience, about seeing opportunities where others saw only complexity. Buffett had often spoken of reading 500 pages a day in his early career, of building a knowledge compound interest. Mark realized it wasn't just about reading, but about the asterisk deliberate. Consistent absorption, asterisk of information, the quiet accumulation of insight. He saw how Buffett valued a deep, fundamental understanding of how things worked rather than chasing fleeting trends. This idea, simple in its essence, yet profound in its implications, began to resonate. The focus wasn't on getting rich quick, but on becoming knowledgeable slowly and surely. He started small, dedicating 30 minutes each evening to reading not just the buffet book, but anything he could find on business, economics, and human behavior. He realized that this consistent, daily effort to understand was a powerful principle that had shaped one of the world's most successful investors. He kept returning to this idea, the silent, diligent pursuit of understanding. The turning point wasn't a grand event, but a series of small, interconnected actions. Mark started applying the idea of value to his own life, not just money. He looked at his cluttered apartment, his neglected skills, his scattered attention. He began to declutter, selling items he no longer needed, using the small sums to pay down tiny bits of his debt. He found an online course on basic data analysis, something relevant to his existing job, and instead of binging television, he spent his evenings methodically working through the lessons, applying the same focused learning he'd read about. He wasn't seeking instant results, but a deeper understanding, a quiet confidence building day by day. He remembered Buffett's adage about compounding. It wasn't just about money, but about knowledge, habits, and relationships. The progress was glacial, almost imperceptible at first. Then, one afternoon, reviewing a company report at work, a pattern jumped out at him, a subtle inefficiency that had been overlooked for months. It was a small detail, but his new habits of focused reading and pattern recognition, honed by his consistent learning, allowed him to see it. He proposed a minor adjustment, a simple reordering of a data process. The adjustment worked. It saved the company a tiny fraction of a percent, but it was a tangible, measurable improvement. His manager, usually stoic, offered a rare nod of approval. It was a small win, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but for Mark, it was a profound breakthrough. It was proof. He remembered reading that Warren Buffett spends hours each day, sometimes up to 80% of his time, simply reading and thinking. It wasn't a secret strategy, but a fundamental commitment to continuous learning. This quiet, persistent habit, once a mere anecdote in a book, had begun to reshape Mark's own reality. He hadn't suddenly become a millionaire, but he had gained something far more valuable: a quiet confidence in his ability to understand, to analyze, to improve. He began to apply this patient, long-term approach to his own personal finances, making small, consistent savings, focusing on quality over quantity in his purchases, and always learning. The changes continued to unfold, not with dramatic fanfare, but with the steady certainty of a quiet sunrise. Mark realized that the real transformation wasn't in a sudden external shift, but in the internal landscape of his own mind. He still worked in an office, but the hum of the fluorescent lights no longer felt like a prison. Instead, it was simply the backdrop to a mind now actively engaged, seeking patterns, identifying value, and consistently growing. He had found a calm, centered approach to his life, a patience he hadn't known he possessed. He began to see opportunities not in grand, sweeping gestures, but in the small, consistent efforts that over time compounded into something significant. He understood that true progress wasn't about chasing fleeting fads, but about cultivating deep knowledge and disciplined action, much like the legendary investor whose biography had sparked his journey. This truth, discovered in the quiet of his own life, continues to shape countless lives today, a testament to the enduring power of timeless principles. The next step, for anyone seeking their own transformation, is closer than you think, often hidden in the quiet moments of daily consistency.